Okay. Good evening. I'm not sure about our sponsors for this week, right? I think we're still sponsored by Mr. Yehuda Greenwood, right? Lily Nishmas Mercedes Bas Levi, and my father's sponsorship, maybe it's expired, but if not, it's sponsored by my father in honor of his friends Yehuda Greenwood and Jeff Wald and the rest of the Kehila. We are just finished the Mishnah on Mem Gimel and Aleph. We are on the very top of Mem Gimel Amid Beis. And we were dealing with circumstances in which there was a loan with collateral, and the collateral had either a greater value or lesser value than the loan. At the beginning of the Mishnah, the collateral is less valuable than the loan. And so what winds up happening is the fellow who has the collateral loses the collateral, and now he wants to claim. He says that you have to reduce the value of the loan, right? Reduce the value of loan because I lost the collateral, and so the question is, how much is the claim of the collateral? So if you have a circumstance where one fellow says the collateral is worth a shekel, and the other person that essentially they say, well, the loan was for two shekel, and then was for a seller which was 2 shekel, and the other person says it's a shekel, and the other person says no, the loan was the same value as the mashkon, as the collateral. So then he's essentially denying the loan. Then there's a circumstance where he admits to part of the loan, and then we had the other way around. So now the Gemara, the last thing we say is that we make the person who is the lender take the oath rather than the borrower, because we don't want the lender finding the mashkon at the end after an oath has already been taken, and then we figure out what the actual value is, and then everything looks really messy. So the Gemara wants to know, which case is the last line of the Mishnah going on? If it's the last line of the Mishnah, so then that circumstance was where the lender claims that the mashkon was of the equivalent value, the collateral was the equivalent value as the loan, and therefore he says, I don't owe anything, and which the other fellow says, the borrower says, no, the mashkon, the collateral was worth way more, so you owe me money. So in that circumstance, the borrower is claiming money from the lender, so therefore the lender is the one who's already swearing. So what would be the point of making a statement? The lender is the one who swears. So Amar Shmuel, so Shmuel says, Aresha. So he says, but typically the Shmuel Gabi Melvin, we already know that the loan is, that the oath is by the lender. So Shmuel says, Aresha, it's going to be on the first part of the Mishnah. The first part of the Mishnah is where the borrower is doing the swearing, because the claim is that the loan is not as much as the loan was for more than the collateral, in which case it's the lender who's swearing and not who's swearing. So
was it sufficient amount more, or just a little more?
It does not matter how much, right? It depends. We had a machlokas earlier whether the denial needs to be the equivalent of 2 pieces of silver or not, but at least it has to be that. But it doesn't have to be the difference. It's a machlokas, as we had discussed over there, whether the difference has to be significant or not. Now, v'chein amar Reb Chia Barav says also as Aresha, v'chein amar Rabbi Yochanan Aresha. Rabbi Yochanan also, when he explained this line of the Mishnah, he said, talks about the first part. So my Resha, so which part of the beginning? Well, it's safe for the Resha. It has to be the end of the beginning, because the first line of the Mishnah, there's no oath at all, because the claim is that the loan and the collateral are of equivalent values, and if the loan and the loan and the collateral are of equivalent values, then he's completely denying anything that he owes. There's no oath at all. So therefore, the second case is where the loan is considered to be where he says, you owe me still a little bit of money, and the other guy says, I owe you less than what you think I owe you. But he's at least admitting to part of it. Then the borrower would have an oath, but now we're going to move the oath to the lender in order so that the person who's making the oath is the one who has the collateral. And that's the case of Sela Hilvi Sicha Alav, where the person says the loan was for a Sela, which is 2 shekel, the shekel hayashaveh, and the collateral was worth 1 shekel. So now you owe me 1 shekel. The hala omer, and which the borrower says, lo, that is not the case. Ki ela Sela Hilvi Sani. I agree, the loan was for a Sela Alav, ushlosha dinarin hayashaveh, but it's 3/4. It's a 3/4 of a Sela which I owe back to you. So therefore, it's like somebody saying, you owe me $50. He says, the loan was worth $100. I lost something, it was worth 50. And he says back, no, I only owe you 25 because the value of the collateral was 75, not 50 like you claim. So now he's chayev deshvua gabi lovehi. So now he'd be liable. So now under that circumstance, since the borrower is the one who is admitting to part of the claim, so then he is going to he would be the one who's liable for the oath. And v'shaklu rabbanon milove v'shadyuha al milveh. And the rabbanon took the loan from the borrower and threw it onto the lender, right? So that it wouldn't be that the borrower would make the oath and then the lender would take and find the collateral and the whole situation would get embarrassing. V'hasha da'amar Ravashi dekaimalon zen nishba she'ina b'rshus v'zen nishba kamashave. So now, though, the Ravashi says, now what we've done is we've make the person who owns the pikadon, who is in possession of the collateral. Why don't we'll make him take an oath that he doesn't have it anymore. So if he make him take an oath, then there's no chance that he's going to say, I found it, and catch him. So therefore, we can make it, right? Zesh nishba kamashave. So then the other one then he could take an oath that it's not in his possession, and then the other one can say how much it's worth. So hachikamer. So then this is how you are going to explain it. Mi nishba techila. Then the issue is, okay, there's two oaths that have to take place. You have an oath that the item is completely lost, and then you have an oath that I'm claiming that the item is worth more than you think it's worth. Right. So
has there ever been a time where the item was lost, but
that's what they were worried about. That's exactly what they were worried about. They were worried that the guy would say it's lost, but then it wasn't really lost, and he was trying to trick the guy, try to get him to trap him into thinking that the item was worth more than it was. So mi mishpat chila, the question that the Mishnah is asking is who swears first. And the answer is Misha Pikadon Eslo, the person in that circumstance, you're going to make the lender, he has the collateral, he's going to swear first. Shema Yishba Zeh, because if you took the oath the other way around, then the borrower would swear to the value of the collateral, and then once that happens, Yotzi Hala Esa Pikadon, then the lender will find, quote unquote, find the collateral and say, here it is, and you're wrong, and now we can't believe you about anything, and you owe me the money altogether. Okay, so that is that's that section about who takes that oath and when. Amar Shmuel says, Haiman de osve alpha zuze lekavre. Let's take a new case. Person lent 1,000 zuz to his friend, umashkin lekata de magla, and the collateral was a handle for a scythe, right? Scythe is one of these harvesting tools, right? So the handle for a scythe is not worth 1,000 zuz. So the collateral is worth way less than the loan. But avid kata de magla, if the person who is the lender loses the collateral, avad alpha zuze, he loses his 1,000 zuz. Because the collateral is supposed to be in exchange for the loan. So therefore, even if it doesn't have the value of the loan,
you have to find another way of paying him back somehow.
Well, it's at this point that he doesn't have to pay back, right? That's the point we're making. Once the collateral is lost, right? The collateral is proof that you still owe me the money. And so if I have the collateral, you owe me the money. I don't have the collateral anymore. There's no money to pay.
So whatever I took from your collateral is mine now. You're not getting it back. Basically.
Well, the collateral's lost. Well, he claims the collateral's lost, right? The collateral's not here. Aval, however, tarti katatai lo. However, if you have two handles, right, then we don't, let's say he loses one, but he still has the other. We don't say that each handle is worth 500. Because what we say is that the existence of the collateral proves that the loan is not paid. As long as some of the collateral still exists, we know the loan is not paid, he can still collect. Now, the handle could be worth 2 zuz, okay? So then he lost one handle, so now he only has to pay back 998 zuz. But the loan is still collectible because the pikadon, the collateral, still exists. So you deduct the amount, the value of the second part of the item. As long as part of the collateral still exists, the loan can still be collected. That is the opinion of Shmuel. For Rav Nachman Amar, Rav Nachman says, Afilu tarti katatai avad, chada avad chamesh meya, avad idach, avad kulei. And Rav Nachman says, not so. If you have two axes, two handles, each one is worth 500. That's the way that it works. That's the intention of the collateral. You give me two objects if you give me two handles of two items of equivalent value of as the collateral, each one's worth half the loan. So if you lose half of it, then you can only collect the other half of the loan. Aval, kanta v'nascha, but what if the person has a handle and he has a chunk of valuable metal, like a chunk of gold, right? Call it an ingot, right? It says a chunk of gold. So now that chunk of gold is value. That's the reason why he gave that to him. So that would be low. Then the ingot is considered a partial repayment for the loan. That's the reason he's giving it to him. So therefore, we don't say the ingot is worth 500 and the handle is worth 500.
The ingot could be over $1,000.
It could, right? It could. But the point is that, well, we're going to presume that it's less than the loan because what we're suggesting is that that when he loses the ingot, he still has to repay the remainder of the loan based on the handle of the scythe. But you're going to deduct the value of the ingot from the loan amount. Because why would have given an ingot? The answer is because it's a valuable item. It's a partial repayment. So Nardoi has a third opinion, and they say, Afilu kata v'nascha avad nascha avad palga avad kata avad kule. They say it does not matter what the object is. Any two objects, every object is worth half of the loan. So therefore, regardless of whatever the value of the ingot is, you lose that, 500 zuzes off. You lose the handle for the scythe, 500 zuzes off. Okay, so that's the three versions. Tanan, we learned in a Mishnah. Mishnah says, Sela hilvisicha, I lent you a sela of money, a love, v'shekel haya shaveh. And they say that it was worth, that the collateral was worth a shekel. The Hala Omer, and the other one says, Lo, ki ela sela hilvisani alav. And the other one says, no, the item was worth, the loan was for a sela, I agree to that, but ushlosha dinarin hava, but my collateral was worth 3/4 of the value of the loan, not only half of the value of the loan. So then chayev, now he's liable for an oath because one guy's claiming half the loan back, 50, and the other $50 out of the $100 that was loaned, and the other guy's saying, no, it was worth $75. So therefore he's liable for an oath because he's admitting that he owes part of what was the claim. The claim was for $50 more that you owe me, and you admitted 25 of it, so there's an oath. Now, that's a problem because if he lost the collateral, according to what Shmuel just said, he lost the collateral, that means that he shouldn't be able to collect anything, right? Like the handle for the scythe. It doesn't matter what the value of the item is, right? The item is lost, he can't collect any of it.
That's why you should never trust the person that's why you should never trust him because it shows you how he's very irresponsible.
I think he must have thought he was responsible at the outset, but you're right. Yeah, it's hard to trust people. So leimole, so you could say to him, ha kabilte. He says that is. So let him say, look, he says, why doesn't he say, look, you lost the item, right? That's you took the mashkan as the equivalent of the loan, and you don't have it anymore, so I don't have to pay. So the answer is Masnisen kidid parish ushmul bidelo parish. The Mishnah is talking about a circumstance where they specified. They said, "I'm giving you this collateral as its equivalent to the loan." However, Shmuel's case is where they made no such declaration. In which case, if they make no such declaration, the regular collateral stands in the place of the entire loan. But if they specify, if I hand you a watch, it's going to be $3,000 loan, here's my watch, it's worth $3,000. Okay, so now you're making it very clear that the value of the collateral is critical to this loan amount, to the deal. So therefore, if I handed you a watch that was worth $1,500, so now I'm making it very clear, and I say to you, this is like my collateral, and it's worth this much of the loan. If you lose it,
Tisset or a Rolex or whatever.
So right. So when they specify it, so since they specify it, so then it's going to be it can be deducted from the value. Okay, lema ketanai. Let's say that this point of Shmuel is a machlokas tanaim is an argument amongst the tanaim. Somebody lends money to his friend with a collateral. The avad hamashkon and the collateral gets lost. Yishba v'yitol es ma'osav. He can swear and take his money. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer. That's what Rabbi Eliezer says. Rabbi Akiva says, Yahu shiomer lo klum hilvisani el alamashkon. The person say, no, the whole reason why I loaned you, the collateral was to prove that I owe you still the money. If you lost the collateral, I don't owe you anymore. Avad amashkon avdu ma'osav. If you lost the collateral, I don't have to pay. Right? Aval, however, Hamal ve'elef zuz bishtar, if the loan took place, there was 1,000 zuz, and this is, like you say, don't trust people. This guy wrote a contract, and they wrote it into a contract, v'iniach mashkon biyado, and he gave him a collateral, divra kol avar mashkon avdu ma'osav. Then everyone agrees that if you lose the collateral, you lose the money. Okay, so now, Aval, so heichi dami. So what's the case here in the brisa? I deshaver shiur zuze, right? So let's say that the amount is worth, it's the equivalent amount, that the collateral is the even amount. So then, okay, so my tameh de Rabbi Eliezer, what would Rabbi Eliezer's rationale be that if you lose the mashkon, I have to pay anyway? If you gave me a mashkon worth $1,000 and the loan was for $1,000 and you lost it, of course, there's no reason to say that I would have to pay. Clearly, $1,000 cancels the $1,000 loan. Rather, the circumstance must be that the collateral is worth less than the loan. $1,000 loan, the collateral is worth $100. And the whole argument here is within Shmuel's law. That Shmuel's law was that according to Rabbi Eliezer, he does not hold of Shmuel's law. And he says,
"Don't you think that the loan would be the same amount as the collateral?"
No, it doesn't have to be. That's what we're saying. It does not have to be, right? The collateral could be worth way less than the loan. And so that's the argument of Shmuel. Shmuel's point is that despite the fact that the collateral is worth less than the loan, if you lose the collateral, you cannot collect the loan. That's what Rabbi Akiva says. But Rabbi Eliezer does not say that, and so therefore, it seems to be that the rule of Shmuel is an argument between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer. So the answer is, lo bidelo shavi kuliyama leis lehu d'Shmuel. No. When it comes to, it could be that if the item wasn't equivalent to the loan, nobody would hold of Shmuel's opinion. V'hacha, but here, b'deshavi shir zuze, here we're discussing where the value of the item is equivalent to the loan. So then why are they arguing? Obviously, we said everybody should agree that if you lost a $1,000 item and the loan was $1,000, the loan should be canceled. The argument is according to the opinion of Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak says, how do I know that the person who accepts the security, he becomes the temporary owner of that item? So if you give me I give you a $3,000 loan, you give me a $3,000 watch, I actually own the watch now. How come? How do I know that? This is Rabbi Yitzchak says. When you have a collateral, let's say a person is a poor person, and I take the collateral for them. So the Torah tells me I should return the collateral to the person so he can use his item because he's poor. He still needs his item that he takes. So then, im eino koneh mashkon, if the person doesn't own the collateral, tzedakah minayin lo. So then why would it be a charitable contribution? So mikan lebal chov shekonim mashkon. That, says Rabbi Yitzchak, is how we know that the bal chov, that the lender owns the collateral. Okay, so now lema that Rabbi Yitzchak tanaihi. This is the argument that's going on here. According to where am I? 1 second. Okay, so let's say this is an argument. So what happens is Rabbi Akiva holds like Rabbi Yitzchak, right? He says that if you lost the collateral, you've gotten paid already. You had the watch; it was yours. It was a $3,000 watch, $3,000 loan. Everybody's even, and that's the end of the day. Okay, that's why he doesn't have anything. He loses the collateral, he loses the loan. But Rabbi Eliezer, he disagrees, and he says, you don't own the mashkon, you're just holding on to it. Therefore, he's just considered to be what we call a shomer chinam. He is watching it, and he has little responsibility. So therefore, if the item gets lost, or stolen, like we say, he's not liable, he's not responsible for that loss, because he's a free guards person. He's only liable if he's negligent, and he wasn't negligent. So the item got lost, right? So then he is still able to collect his loan despite the item being lost, and that is the argument potentially in our brisa. So v'tizbera, does that make now? Does that so? So let's lema Rabbi Yitzchak tonight. Let's say this is an argument Rabbi Yitzchak's opinion. V'tizbara. Now, is it possible for you to say that this argument between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva is it arguing in this point that Rabbi Yitzchak makes? Damar Rabbi Yitzchak, as Rabbi Yitzchak says, shemashkeno shelo b'shas halva, right? It makes sense to say that Rabbi Yitzchak holds his opinion that if the case is as the Torah says, I take my collateral not at the time of the original loan. Meaning, how come? Because the Torah case is like this. I lent you money, $100, and you're not paying me back. So therefore, I go to Beis, and Beis says, fine, go and take an item of collateral worth $100 from this person's house. Now that I have the item, the Torah says, since he's a poor person, give it back to him when he needs it, right? You don't want to hold on to it because that's a tzedakah item for you to do, right? You have his winter coat, it's worth $100, but when it's cold outside and he needs it, go give it back to him, right? Because he's not going to be able to afford his own, and so therefore that's a tzedakah for you to do. So that makes sense when you've collected it separately, because then you're collecting it in order to basically you're collecting it as payment, right? But mashkeno b'shas halva mi amar. But if the collateral was at the moment of the loan, so then that's not a payment. That's not a payment. That was simply an exchange in order to be able to remind the person to be able to pay back. Right? So rather, mashkono shelo b'shas halva. So when it comes to a collateral, that's taken when it's not at the origin of the loan, kuliyama lo pligi de isbud Rabbi Yitzchak. Everyone agrees that what Rabbi Yitzchak is saying is true. Vahacha, so what's our argument between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva? So we had the argument between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva was that there was a loan of, let's say, $1,000, and the mashkon gets lost. So Rabbi Akiva says that if you lost it, so then you could say what loan? I don't know what you're talking about. So therefore, since you could say that, you don't have to repay anymore because you lost the mashkon. Rabbi Eliezer says no. It is you can take an oath and still collect. Right? Minus the amount of whatever the collateral was worth.
You had a loan and you said what loan? Is that kind of lying?
Yes, but we always make this rule. We call this amigo. If you are lying, then why not lie the best way that you possibly can? It indicates that the thing that you're saying is truthful, right? And that is that you lost the mashkon. That's the end of it. I don't have to collect. So now, so what's going on here? B'mashkino b'shas halvaso. What's happening here is the collateral was taken at the moment of the loan. Now, if that's the case, so then ubishomer aveda kamiflagi. What's the argument between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva about whether you can collect the loan or not? It's an argument about whether somebody who finds a lost item, what is his status? That's the argument. De'itmar, as we learned in another place, shomer aveda. So let's say somebody finds a lost item. So while you have the lost item that doesn't belong to you, right? So you're guarding somebody else's item. What's your status as a watchman? What's your liability if the item gets lost or stolen under your possession? So a shomer aveda.
You try to look for it, if you can't find it.
But what's your liability, right? In other words, it got lost, right? The item got lost. Do you have to pay for it?
You go to the owner and tell him you lost it, and then
Well, the thing is that since you had it, you're liable. You had it. You're responsible. You lost it.
You should pay for the lost item.
Okay,
right.
So that's the question. So Rabbi says you're kishomer chinam. You're a free watchman on Mem Daled Amud Beis. You are a free watchman. As a free watchman, you are liable. You're not liable. You're doing the guy a favor, essentially. Why should you be liable at such a high level? You're only liable if you're negligent, right? You shouldn't be liable for if you lost it.
Even though you're not getting paid, you're doing it for free, but still, you have to be more responsible.
Right. So you have to be somewhat responsible, but you don't have to be more responsible. The question is how much responsible, right? So you don't have to be more responsible. You have to be a little responsible. That's the point. That's what the first opinion says. Rabbi Yosef says, Kishomer Sachar Dami, you are a paid watchman. Why are you a paid watchman? So the Gemara Mitzvah tells us that you're a paid watchman because if while you're taking care of this item, a poor person were to knock on your door and come to collect money, you wouldn't have to answer the door because you're involved in a mitzvah. Osek b'mitzvah pater min mitzvah. you're involved in one mitzvah, you don't have to do another mitzvah. That mitzvah could cost you. Therefore, it's this actually watching this lost item saves you some money. So therefore, that value that you get out of it is worth something. So you're a shomer sacher. Since you're a shomer sacher, you're actually getting some value out of this. So therefore, you have a higher degree of responsibility towards it. Okay, so now, Lema de Rabbi Yosef Tanahi. Let's say this position of Rabbi Yosef is this argument between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva, right? Because what we're going to say is, Rabbi Akiva is going to hold like Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Akiva says that you were responsible for this lost item. You were responsible for this mashkon, right? You had a responsibility. You lost it. Okay, so you lost it, and now you can't collect your loan. Sorry, you had a high level of responsibility. And Rabbi Eliezer will say, no, that wasn't the level of responsibility that you have, and so therefore, even though you lost the mashkon, okay, but you can still swear and collect your loan. So the answer is, no. The Shomer Aveda, when it comes to, nope, that's not the case. That's not what Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yosef are arguing about. When it comes to a lost item, the Kuliyama is Lihu de Rabbi Yosef. Everybody agrees with Rabbi Yosef. You are a paid watchman. The Hacha, but here the question is, B'malvet tzarech l'mashkon kamiflagi. The argument is, what's the connection between the loan and the security? Mar savar mitzvah ka'avid. One position is, you're doing a mitzvah. You're guarding and taking care of the person's item, the security item, just like any other lost item. Since you're guarding it and taking care of his item, you are doing a mitzvah by taking care of his item, and therefore you're exempt from another mitzvah. Umar savar lav mitzvah kavod. The other one says, what are you talking about? It's a rental agreement. What mitzvah are you doing? There's no mitzvah here, because the circumstance is that if I made an agreement with you, what if I want to wear the watch? Can I do that? So if I can wear the watch, so then I'm basically renting the watch from you, right? I'm renting it. And if I'm renting it from you, there's no mitzvah, right? If I rent something, if I rent your car, my watching your car is not based on me being a nice guy. That's the agreement we have. So therefore, it's not a mitzvah.
The agreement was for you to watch the watch, not to wear the watch.
Well, so that's the question. What was the original agreement, right? So this is that the person, this is according to the position, that a person has the right to use the item that is the collateral. See, since you have the right to use it, so then you're really not doing the guy a favor. And if you're not doing a guy a favor, it's not a mitzvah. If you were, in fact, doing the guy a favor, you're right. Then it would fall into the same category as watching somebody's lost item. But this is a circumstance where you had permission to use it. The collateral is a Kiddush cup. Okay, I want to make Kiddush out of it. I can use this beautiful Kiddush cup. So that's very nice. But then you're not doing anybody a favor then. You're not doing a mitzvah for that person taking care of it. Right. Okay, Lema Kitanai. Let's say, okay, we're going to try again. Let's say that this is an argument. This is again this Shmuel's statement, right? That when you lose when you lose the collateral, you're not able to collect the loan. That's Shmuel's statement. So let's say it's subject to a different dispute. Hamalvis chavero lamashkum. Somebody loans his friend money with a collateral. V'nichnas shmita. Now the shmita year comes. Okay. Afal pi she'ino shava ela palga. Even though the loan amount and the collateral are not equivalent, so it's not an exchange, right? I understand that Shemitah wouldn't cancel that if it was an exchange, because basically at any point I could say it's not a loan issue.
Yovel would probably cancel it though.
No, Yovel does not cancel. That's the point. Shemitah doesn't cancel. Yovel doesn't cancel. Nothing cancels it, right? So therefore, that I might have exchange, so then I can understand. I'll come back. You want your watch back? Give me the $3,000. Forget whatever kind of loan it is, right? This is now a circumstance where my loan is worth more than the item. It doesn't matter. Eino mishamet. It does not cancel. Why? Because the loan and the collateral are linked to each other, regardless of what the value of the collateral is. And that sounds like Shmuel's opinion. Because if I lost the collateral, I can't collect the debt. That's because the two are completely linked. It doesn't matter what the value of the item is. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says, right? Im haya mashkono keneged chovo eno mishamit, right? If the value is equivalent, okay, then there's a connection. Essentially, there's a trade going on here. V'im lav mishamit, but if it's not, then there's still an element of a loan here, and it cancels. So my eno mishamit. So what does that mean? It doesn't cancel. The Kamar Tanakama. The Tanakama says it doesn't get canceled. Ilema kenegdo. If you are just saying that it doesn't cancel. Let's say the loan was for $1,000 and the collateral is worth $500. It doesn't cancel the $500 part. So Rabbi Yehuda Anasi savar kenegdo nami mishamit. Then how does Rabbi Yehuda Anasi say that the $500 does get canceled? That doesn't make sense. Ella amai tofis mashkon. So kenegdo nami says ella amai. Amai tafis mashkon el amai tafis mashkon. So if there's a cancellation, then why would you have taken the collateral in the first place? So therefore, that isn't the explanation. El alav keneged kulo. Rather, what's happening is that the collateral, right? It is that even though the collateral is a lesser amount, it reflects on the entirety of the loan. Ubid Shmuel, this is the argument of Shmuel. And so therefore, one opinion says that yes, a $50 mashkon, a $50 collateral can be offset by a $1,000 loan. It's not going to get canceled on Shemitah, but that also means that if you lose your collateral, you can't collect the loan. Those two things would be linked. So low, no, not so. Liolam kenegdo, really, we're talking about only the equivalent portion. Ubahai kemiflagi, this is what the argument is about. Tanakama savar kenegdo, the Tanakama holds that the part of the loan, if it's a $50 collateral and a $100 loan, the only part that doesn't get canceled by Shemitah is the $50 part. The other part does get canceled. For Rabbi Yehuda Nasi Savar Kenego Nami Mishamik. The other opinion, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says, no, even the $50 gets canceled by the Shemitah year. Udekamart lemai tafis lemashkon. And what your question is, then why did he take the mashkon if it wasn't going to have any sort of trade value? So the answer is lezichron devarim bialma. It was just a reminder. The collateral has nothing to do with the loan. They're not linked. And I thought that what we were saying is at least the collateral was as an exchange. So therefore, if it has a $50 value, I'm at least securing $50 from the loan. Not so. The collateral has nothing to do with the loan. The collateral is just so that I can say, hey, you think you paid me? Then why am I still holding this collateral? That's all that it's about. Therefore, when the Torah says a loan is canceled, the loan is canceled. That's how that works. That ends the sixth. We're up to 7 now.
Yeah, wow. Final one. No?
There's an 8.
Really?
There's 8. There's 8.
Yep, I was looking
Yes.
through it.
We've got only like a few pages left. We've got two chapters in it. Okay. Kol nishbain Shabbat Torah. The rule is that anybody who swears in the Torah, nishbain v'lo mishamin, they swear and then they don't pay, right? You're usually the one who gets accused, right? The one who gets accused to pay, they're the one who has to take the oath, and then they don't pay. Ve'elu nishbain v'notlin, but there are some times that's not the rule. And these are the exceptions to the rule. Hasachir, somebody who hires workers. Hanigzal, somebody who steals or has something stolen from him, then he now wants to reclaim it. Ve'hanechbal, somebody who gets damaged and he's trying to claim the damages. Ve'shekenegdo chashad al shvua, if the person who is the other party is not honest enough to be able to take the oath. V'chenvani al pinkaso, and a store owner on his receipts, on his ledger. Right? So now, let's talk about all these cases. What are these cases? Hasachir ketza, what's the case of the guy who's hiring workers? Amar lo, the guy says to him, Tain li schari. The worker comes and says, you owe me money, give me my wages. Sheyesh li biyadcha, you owe me, right? You owe me money, I worked all day, now pay me. Hu omer nasati. The guy says, I paid you already. Okay? V'hala omer lo natalti. And the other guy says, I didn't get my wages, so you owe me. So hu nishba v'notel. So then the worker swears that he didn't get his money, and he takes his money. Normally, right, we said that usually the guy who is accused, he gets to swear and not pay. So it should be that the guy who hired the worker should be swearing and not paying. This case, not so. The worker swears that he didn't get his pay and collects. Rabbi Yehuda says, Ad shetehisham miktsas hodah. You still need, according to Rabbi Yehuda, a partial admission of the claim. Okay, you can't just say, I don't owe you at all, I already paid you at all, and I owe you nothing, and still swear. There has to be a partial admission. Ketzad, how does that work? Amar lo tain li schari, chamishim dinar, you owe me 50 dinar from today's work. sheyesh libiyadcha, vehu omer hiskabalta dina zarav. And you said, and the other guy says, no, it was only 25, right? It's a smaller amount. I don't owe you that entire amount. Okay, that's what Rabbi Yehuda says. In that circumstance, the worker is going to take the oath. Next case. Nigzal Ketzad, the guy who had something stolen from him. What's the case there? Hayom mi'idin oso shenichnas lebeso lemashkeno shelo bershus. They talked about this guy. They said that somebody owed him money, so he snuck into the guy's house, took something from him in order to use it as a collateral to be able to get his money back.
No, they don't. But you're breaking in.
Then you're breaking in and you're stealing, and that's not allowed. So now, hu omer? So the guy, the borrower, says, Kalai natalta, you stole my things. So you have to give them back, regardless of me paying. You have to give them back. Vehu omer lo natalti, and the guy claims, no, I did not. So hu nishba venotel. So the person who had the item, remember that there are witnesses that witness the fact that this guy did sneak into the house.
They had neighbors.
Yeah, they don't know what he took, right? He just snuck in. They see him walking out with a big bag, so they know something happened. So now, when that happens, the person can swear what the items were and take his items back. Okay? Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Yehuda says, Ad shtesha miktzah, so you still need a partial admission here. Ketzad, what would be a circumstance of partial admission according to Rabbi Yehuda? Amar lo, shnei kelim natalta, you took my 2 candlesticks. V'omer lo natalti alech, and he says, no, I only took 1. Right? Then, he's got to take the oath. Nechbal, what's the case of the person who got injured? Ketzad, how's that? Hayu me'idin oso shenichnas tachas yado sholim, right? Person says, they testified, he went into his house and he was perfectly healthy. The yatsa chavel, and when he left, he had 2 black eyes. Okay, so something happened, right?
He got ambushed in.
Now, if they saw him beating him up, obviously they could testify in court and make him pay, right? But they didn't see him beat him up. V'amar lo chavalti, he said, you hit me, punched me a couple of times. Vehu amar lo chavalti, I did not.
Right here by my eyes.
Okay, hareze nishba v'notel, so the person's going to swear and collect. Rabbi Yehuda, it's not proof, right? That's just what we saw circumstantial, because he could have tripped and bumped his face, right? So, but he swears and can collect. Rabbi Yehuda says, Ad shtesha miktzas hada, you have to have some kind of partial admission to the claim. Ketzad, for example, how? Amar lo chavalti b'shtayim, you hit me twice, 2 black eyes. V'hol amar lo chavalti bach elachas. Only one of those black eyes is my fault. The other one is not my fault, right? Sorry. Okay, shekenegdo. What's the circumstance of where the other person who's supposed to be taking the oath is not trustable? Ketzad, how does it work? Mem Hayamad Aleph. Achas Shevuos ha'edus v'achas Shevuos ha'pikadon. Right? If you have a circumstance where you have a oath of testimony, person says that you owe me, you have a testimony that you owe me. You have testimony to be able to give me, and the guy refuses to testify. So he loses money because of it. He lied. Also a circumstance where he takes an oath of collateral. That isn't true. Even if the oath is just a false oath, right? He just says that, like we had the circumstance, somebody just says that pillar is stone or something like that pillar is gold, right? Even if that, in none of those circumstances, so then he's a liar. So now we can't have the person who's being accused can't swear. Then the other person can swear and collect. Let's say one of them was a gambler, or he was lending with interest. These are the cases that we had in Sanhedrin where we said somebody couldn't be trusted to be a witness. Or he was somebody who was involved in doves, right? We had those circumstances discussing with those. Socher Shvi is somebody who dealt in business with Shemitah produce, we had discussed. V'shekenegdo nishba v'notel. So now, in that circumstance, the other person who's making the claim can swear and take what he's claiming. Hayu shneim chashudin. Now, let's say both of them are not trustworthy. Right? Both. So now what do you do? Neither of them can swear. So Chazra Hashvua Lim Koma, Div Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says the oath goes back to the original place that it was. So that sounds like we'll see what it means in the Gemara, but let's say at least it sounds like we're saying that it goes back to the person who was accused. He can't take the oath, and therefore he's going to pay. Well, we'll see if that's what it means. Rabbi Meir Omer Yachloka. Rabbi Meir says nobody can swear, so let's just split the difference. Right? We're just going to split it, and everybody gets one. He'll keep half, they don't pay half. V'hachenvani al pen kaso, ketzad. What's the circumstance? They have a storekeeper with his tab. So, lo yomer lo kasav al pen kasi shata chayev li masayim zuz. It's not what you'd think. You think it might mean, look, I've got every time somebody came in and I let people pay on credit, right? So you took things, I wrote it down. You owe me 200 zuz. I've got it written in my ledger. And now I can swear and take. That is not the case. That is not it, because that's just a regular loan and it's a claim. That's not the circumstance. Ella, rather the case is like this. Omer lo, tein libanaisa sayim chitim, tein lipoali sela maos. The guy tells the storekeeper, he says, here's what I would like you to do. Give me I've got good credit. When my workers want to get paid, let them have store credit. So when they come in to go shopping, put it on my tab. Or when my kids come in to go shopping, right, put it on my tab.
Have you taken off your payment, basically?
Well, he hasn't paid yet, right? But he has instructed the storekeeper, and that's what makes all the difference. He instructed the storekeeper to give the items to these people. So now, hu omer nasati, he says, here's my list of all the things that I gave to your workers. Here's the list of things I gave to your kids. Vehein omrim lo natalnu. The workers say, we never took anything. We didn't go shopping. It didn't happen. So hu nishba v'notel. So now the storekeeper can swear and collect the payment from this guy because he authorized it. You gave him that level of believability by telling him that I would pay you. So therefore, you were trusting him and you don't hold him accountable for a proof. We don't make him take out video footage to indicate that he did it, right? You said you would trust him, so now you have to. But also, remember we said that the workers have believability also. So that means the workers can also swear and they get their payment. So now this guy's going to get pinched on both ends. He's got to pay the storekeeper because the storekeeper says I gave it. And he's got to pay the workers even because the workers said we never got it.
He goes all his money.
Amar ben Nanas says, Ketzad elu ve'elu ba'in lidei Shevuos shav. He says, how can we allow that to go on? It's impossible that the storekeeper paid and that the workers didn't collect. One of them is not telling the truth. Now, you're right, okay, it's a mistake. Somebody's made a mistake here, but we can't allow that to happen. We can't allow both of those oaths to happen, and we know one of them is going to be false. Ella, so rather, hu notel shelo b'shvua. So rather, what's going to happen in that circumstance is that the storekeeper is able to collect the money. He does not have to swear. Vehein notlin shelo b'shvua, and then the workers also, they don't need to swear. So we're going to remove the oaths in that circumstance because in that case, you're going to wind up with a lie somewhere in there. Amar lechenvani, he says to the storekeeper, tainli bedinar peiros v'nosan lo, right? So he says, give me for a dinar's worth of fruit. So the guy gave him. Here's a dinar's worth of fruit, gives him a couple of pounds of fruit. Amar lo, tainli says, so dinar. He says, okay, now pay me the dinar. Amar lo nisativlach. He says, I already paid you. So they don't remember, right? So he says, venasato be'ondpali. You already put it in the cash register, right? You took my money first. So now, yishava bal habayis shenason lo as dinar. We're going to make the owner, the not the storekeeper, but the guy who's buying, swear that he gave him the money, and then he doesn't have to pay again. Amar lo tainli es haperos. Now, what if the case was, he said to him, give me the fruit. Amar lo, he said to him, nasatimlach, I already gave it to you, and it was delivered to your house. So yishba chenvani, now the storekeeper takes the oath, right? And Rabbi Yehuda says, so therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says, kol shaperos biyado, yado al yona. What we have to look at this as, we're going to have the more explain this. Rabbi Yehuda says that whoever's holding the fruit, so then they have presumed, they're presumed to be correct, right? Because nobody hands over the produce without getting the money first. So therefore, if whoever's holding the produce, that means that the money hasn't been paid yet. Okay. Amar l'shulchani. Now we have a similar case. Somebody says to a money changer, right? So that guy has to go to get change, right? So he goes to, it's like, we go to our cash, go to the ATM in order to get money out, right? They would take a large currency denomination and now he wants to get smaller ones so we can go shopping with it.
Oh, it's not changing currencies.
No, right? This is the money changers because you can imagine that it didn't make sense for them to store all of their money in shekel pieces or prutas, right? Even though if I go to the store and buy some eggs, I need some prutas. You're not going to go to the store with a $1,000 bill, right? But since they didn't keep their money in banks and things, they would keep their amounts of money in the large denominations. The savings would be in the large denominations, and then they'd have to cash it out. So they take the very large gold coins, right? Go to the money changer and say, okay, I'd like to exchange this for some of the smaller denominations. And that's how they would have the money to spend, because you don't go to the store. The guy who's selling wine in the store doesn't have change for a dinar, right? He doesn't have change for the golden dinar. He only has change for the zuz, right? So therefore you want to exchange. So the guy goes to the money changer and he says, Tain li bedinar ma'os. He says, here's my dinar. Now I want you to give me the money, right? V'nasan lo, and he gives it to him. Amar lo, tain li as a dinar. Then the money changer says, okay, now give me the dinar. So Amar lo, nisativlach. He says, I already gave it to you. Same case like the fruit, right? V'naso be'ond pali, but you've already put it in your till. So yishava balabayis, and now then the person who's the owner of who's not the money changer, but the other fellow, he gets to swear and not pay. Nasan lo es dinar. If he gives him the dinar, Amar lo tain li asamos. He says, okay, now give me the change. Amar lo nesatim lach. He says, I already gave it to you. If yishlach lo kischa, you already put it into your pocketbook. Yishava shulchani. Now the money changer gets to swear. And Rabbi Yehuda says, Ein derech shulchani li tain isar ad sheyitol dinar. Where the Rabbi Yehuda says, that's not how money changers work. Money changers always, they take the money first and then they give the money out. So therefore, that is always presumed to be the case.
And you want to buy something, you give them 20 and they give you like change.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. But therefore, it wouldn't make sense for the shulchani to be able to say, I already gave you the money, right? That would not have happened. That's his point. Would not have happened. If he gave you the money, that means you already gave him the coin. Now he said that if a woman comes to collect her ksuba, so she makes a claim when she brings her ksuba, she says, my husband already paid part of it. Now that ruins the claim of the ksuba, because she had a ksuba, she could have collected all of it, but now that she's raised doubts over how much of it was collected, now she has to take an oath in order to collect the remainder of it. Okay? Ve'ed echad me'ida shehi prua. And now let's say a single witness makes a testimony that she has been paid. Lo tifra ella bishvua, does not get paid unless there's an oath. Now, if the woman comes to collect and she is entitled, right, all of the husband's property is mortgaged to her. So therefore, let's say the husband was in the middle of a big land deal. He sold off all of his land. He's got the money, then he invested the money. He's got nothing. He's got no property, no money. She now has to collect her ksuba. She's able to go to the people who he sold the land to and take that land away from those people, because the mortgage, all of the property is mortgaged to her. If she's going to do that, or she's going to go to the heirs and collect property from them, lo tifra el b'shvua, she has to take an oath in order to collect. Again, as with the theme of the Mishnah, she's swearing and collecting, which is not the normal way that this works. V'hanif eres shelo bifanav, lo tifra el b'shvua. Now, if she is getting paid and the husband isn't present, so then we're not giving the husband an opportunity to explain what happened, right? He can't say, I did pay her, I have that, maybe I have witnesses. Therefore, if he's not present, we're going to make her take an oath also in order to be able to collect. V'chein hayesomim, also the heirs, lo yifra'u ella b'shvua, right? They shouldn't be able to collect either from lands that went to other people, right? Unless they also are able to take an oath. Now, what can they take an oath to? They can't swear, we know that you still owed our father, because how will they know? So rather, what they have to do is they have to take a shvua, shelo pakadnu abba, v'lo amar lanu abba shelo matzinu bein shtarosov shel abba sheshtar ze parua. They have to make an oath. They say, look, we know that there's no collateral for this loan that we have. We also know that our father never told us it was paid. We also can swear to the fact that we went through all of our father's contracts and we didn't find any receipts indicating that this loan was paid. So therefore, to the best of our knowledge, this has not been paid. That is what they're swearing to. Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka says, "Afilu nolad haben la'achar misas ha'av." It doesn't even matter if the son wasn't even born until after the father died, right? Because it's not relevant. The knowledge, the awareness that the father has is not the awareness that the child has is not important. They're just swearing that to the best of their knowledge it has not been paid. So therefore, the child doesn't even have to have been alive when the loan existed. Hareza nishba v'notel, he can swear and collect that money. Amr Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says, Im yesh edim she'amar ha'av b'shas misaso, if there are witnesses to the fact that when the father was dying, he said, Shtar ze eino parua, this contract has not yet been paid, hu notel shabul b'shua, then he can collect it without an oath. Because on his deathbed, right, he makes that statement, he can make that claim, we believe that statement. That's something we believe the person says that. And he never got better, so therefore we know the father never since collected it, so we're going to consider that as if the father was making the claim himself. Ve'elu nishbain shalo bitano. These are the people that do not that we can make them take an oath, even though the claim is not 100% ironclad a claim. Normally, all of these cases have been is I'm saying that you owe the wages of the worker said you owe me money for my wages, and the guy says I don't think so. So now the worker has to swear. These people are saying I think you owe me. But they don't know, and nevertheless, we're going to make them take it. We make the person on the receiving end take an oth. For example,
did you forget?
We're going to see the cases. Hashutfin, right? Partners. Veha arisin, sharecroppers, right? Veha petropin, and these are the people who are administrators for estates, right? Veha isha. Hanoses v'hanosenes b'toch habayis, a woman who is doing business on behalf of the household. So the husband says, I want you to be in charge of whatever. So then, uben habayis. Also, any one of the brothers that is responsible. The brothers have inherited property, and he's taking care of everything for them. So in all of those circumstances, Amar lo ma'ata to'aneni ritzoni shetishbali chayev. He says, one second, I skipped a page here. He says, the partner says to his friend, he says, I'm a little bit concerned that what it is, I'm not really sure if you're paying me right? I'm worried. I don't know, but I'm suspicious that you haven't. I'm looking for proof. So then the person could say, right, I'll swear to it, right? So now he's going to be responsible for swearing. Basically, because we have this business relationship that is already, if I'm asking for proof, even though I don't have a specific something, I don't know that you're stealing from the partnership. I don't know that the one brother is taking from, I don't know, but I'd like to know. So I'd like for you to swear to make sure that you're being honest in business. Then in those circumstances, the person who's doing the business has the obligation to swear that he's doing things right. Okay, chalku shashutfin varisin. So now they divide up. Okay, and now at that moment that they divided up their partnership, they didn't make him take an oath. Nobody asked for it. Everybody assumed everything was okay. So chalku hashutfin varisin ein yochel hashpio. You can't come back later and say, okay, now give me an oath, right? It's at the time of the deal. Once the deal's done, then it's done. Now, if it comes out that they are involved in some other business deal at some future time, and now the guy has to take an oath, then we can throw other things into that oath like we did in the past, right? You say, okay, well, remember that he was always worried about that it was done fairly, so let's throw that into the oath. You can throw that in. But any outstanding oaths, Shemitah is going to cancel them. Why? Because any time that there's a money potentially that's out there, it's a debt, it's a loan, and Shemitah cancels all loans. So therefore, what are you going to swear to? That I owed you from a long time ago? Well, Shemitah would have canceled it anyway. So therefore, if you have any outstanding oaths to take, Shemitah is going to cancel that. Okay, says the Gemara. All the time that there's any time of circumstance, the Torah says that you are going to take an oath, so we swear and we don't pay. And how do I know that? Because the pasuk says, "V'lakach ba'alav v'lo yishalem." Misha alav lishalem lo shvua, right? That the owner is going to accept this collateral, and then he's going to swear and he's not going to pay. So that means the person who is the person who's responsible for paying, right? He's going to swear and not pay. And that's what the pasuk in the Torah says. Ve'elu nishbain v'notlin. But these are the rabbinic circumstances that the Durabanan, they came along and they said, we're going to make the person who is on the receiving end take an oath. Maishna sachir detakinu le'rabanan demishtava. Why is it that the rabbis made this oath that's going to establish that the workers can collect despite the fact that that's not normally the case? V'shakel. So Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Rav Yehuda say, Amar Shmuel, halachos gedol shanukan. These are great halachos. This is a big, huge, this is an amazing halacha. So halachos, honey, he's honey halachos ninu. He says, what do you mean it's a halacha? It's not a halacha. You just said it was a rabbinic enactment. It's not a halacha. Halacha implies that it was from a Torah. Ella, so rather, ema takanos gedol shanukan. What we mean is, this is a great rabbinic enactment. This was a really great one. So, Gedolos, Mikal Dikatkanos, what does that mean? It's a great one. That means there are less good ones? Or do the rabbis do something that wasn't important? Ella Amar Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman means to say, Amar Shmuel, Takanos Kavuos Shanukan. This is an established rule. This was one that has been set and established and everybody's agreed to it. Akrua Rabbanon l'shvua mi balabayis. The Rabbanon took the shvua away from the owner and said, normally the owner is being accused, so he would swear and not pay. We took it away from him. V'shadua asachir, and we said the worker has to take the oath. Why? Mishum kidei chayav. So, because the worker needs the money. So this is for the benefit of the economic society, benefit for economics, workers' rights. We're going to give the worker the ability to swear and collect. 1 second, Mishum kidei chayav desachir kansen leila balabayis. What? You're going to hurt the employer in order to help the worker? That doesn't make sense. Why would you? How's that fair? So the answer is balabayis gufei nichale. The worker, the employer appreciates it too, though, because demishtava sachir, he wants the worker to swear v'shakal and to take it kihechid itagrun leipolim, because he wants to hire workers, and if he makes mistakes in his payroll, people aren't going to want to work for him. So therefore, he likes the idea that the Rabbanan established a defense mechanism so that the worker knows that he's going to be considered to be fair. So adirabba, but what are you talking about? The worker, it should be better for him for the owner, for the employer to take the oath for balabayis v'nafka and not have to pay kihechi diligre balabayis, so that the employer will hire workers. In other words, if he knows that he's going to have to pay just because the workers are going to make claims against him, so then the guy won't hire workers. And now you won't have a job. It's bad. So the answer is balabayis al korche agar. He says, yeah, but the employer, he has no choice. He has to hire workers. He needs people to do the job. So therefore, it's more to the benefit of the worker. So he says, sachir nami al korche mitgar. He says, but the worker, he needs the job. So he's going to do the job regardless. Ella balabayis tarid b'po'alav. This is the answer is, the reason why is because the owner, he gets confused. Right? He's busy with the business. He's got lots of workers. There's no way you can really hold him accountable to remember if everybody got paid or not. That's why. Okay. V'leisev le below Shevuos. So why not give it to him without an oath? Why does the worker have to pay? What pay then? Are we saying that there's like a chazaka that he doesn't know, so then he shouldn't have to? The worker shouldn't have to work. Shouldn't have to. So the answer is kedei lahafiz dalato shobal bayis. The answer is so that the employer will at least feel comfortable that things are going right? That's to protect him. So we make the worker swear. Okay, v'leisiv le be'edim. So why don't we make the worker come with witnesses? Right? That means he's got to get paid with witnesses. So tricha le milsa, that's already annoying. That means that in order to do your payroll, at the end of the day, you got to get witnesses together just to pay all your workers. That's a hassle. The employer doesn't want that. V'leisiv le me'ikara. So he says, so why don't you make him pay up front? Why don't you pay in advance? So the answer is Shneihin Rotzen Beha Kafa. So he says that both of them don't want that. The worker and the employer don't want that. Mem Ham and Beis, because what will happen is that the Baal Bayis doesn't want that because he might not have money at the beginning of the day, right? Depends. He's got the worker working, he's selling the produce, then he makes the money, now he can pay, right? And the worker doesn't want it because where's he going to put the money while he's working? He'll drop it, he'll lose it. So he doesn't want to get the money until the end of the day. Nobody wants the money to get paid until the end of the day. Ihachi, if that's true, afilu katzatz nami. So then why should it be that even if they're arguing about what the salary was, we should always trust the worker. Isn't that the whole point? You should always trust the worker. Allah Matanya, why do we learn in a brisa? Uman omer shtaim katzatztali. If the worker says that the pay, the salary was 2, v'hala omer lo katzatzti l'cha el achas, and the other one says no, it was 1. So hamotzi mechaver alavaraya, the worker has to prove it. Why? Trust the worker. You just said trust the worker. The Baal Bayis doesn't know. So the answer is ktsitzavade midkir dakir lei. What the value of the salary was, that the employer remembers. He may not remember if he paid or not, but he knows that he didn't promise to pay you double minimum wage, right? But no, I recognize that I remember what I promised to pay. If that's the case, then what happens if usually workers have to get paid that day, right? They finish their job, they have to get paid that day. What if the worker didn't get paid, right? And now he's coming back the next day and he says, you never paid me from yesterday. So then the worker should be able to collect. Allah Matanya, why did we learn in a brisa, Avar Zmano, if the worker's past due, and he comes back the next day, velo nasan lo, and he hasn't given the money, harezu ena nishba v'notel, the worker no longer has the right to swear and collect. Why? Because chazaka in balabay is over bebaltalin, because we have a chazaka that the owner would never have let the guy go home without paying him. So and if there was an issue, you would have come yesterday and asked for the money. You didn't. Why are you coming today? So the balabayas Torah b'po'alav. The answer is why? What do you mean? Because the balabayas is all mixed up. He gets confused. So hanimili makme delimtes man chiyuva. That means that he's confused before the time to pay. But kimatus man chiyuva, when it comes to the end of the day and he's got to tally everything up, make sure he paid everything. Rami anav sheu midkar. Then he double checks his mind and goes, "Did I pay everybody? Pay everybody?" Yes, and he double checks. So therefore, a person wouldn't let the end of the day go and violate the prohibition. Now, what are you saying? The chisachar over mishum bal tigzul. You're saying that since the employer wouldn't let the worker go home without paying. But you're saying what? The worker would come back and lie and steal? Like, why don't we say there's a chazaka that the worker wouldn't steal? So the answer, Gabi Balabayas, Ika Trei Chazki. The answer is because by the owner, we have 2 reasons to believe he's telling the truth after the fact. And Chado, first of all, De'ein Balabayas over Babaltam. First of all, he wouldn't let the guy go home if he didn't get paid. V'chad De'ein Sacher Mishai Scharo. And second of all, the worker wouldn't have gone home without asking for it. And therefore, when he comes back tomorrow, you're right, it's unlikely that he would lie, but we have 2 reasons to believe that he did get paid. That's why if it's too late, we're not going to be able to collect. Amar Rav Nachman. Amar Shmuel. Rav Nachman says in the name of Shmuel, Lo shana ela shescharo be'edim. This is only if he hired him with witnesses. But if he hired him without witnesses, remember, this is if he was going to lie, if the owner was going to lie and say, I didn't pay you, if he's lying, so that he would have just said, I never hired you at all. Therefore it has to be that there were witnesses that he was hired so that he couldn't make such a claim. So I could have also said that I did hire you and I already paid you. So Amar le Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak says, Yasher, that's smart, that's good thinking. V'chein Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said that too. We called the polyglot Rish Lakish. You're saying Rabbi Yochanan said that means Rish Lakish was arguing him? No, Ikadamri Mishtav Shasi Le. That what happened was Rish Lakish was having a drink of water at the time that Rabbi Yochanan said it. We had this answer before, right? That he was having a drink of water, therefore he didn't argue, despite the fact that he would have wanted to argue. V'shasik, and he was quiet. V'shasik Le V'ikadamri, and the other one said, Misha Hava Shahi Le V'shasik Le. That what happened was that Reish Lakish wouldn't interrupt in the middle of Rabbi Yochanan Shiur, and he would let him finish it up, and he would stay quiet. So it wasn't clear that he didn't have a clear viewpoint on what Reish Lakish's position was. So he quoted as Rabbi Yochanan's opinion. Itmar Nami, there are those that Amar of Nashia Bar Zvid. That Rav Nashia Bar Zvid said, Amar Rav, in the name of Rav, Lo shana el shescharo be'edim, that this rule that the worker can swear and collect only exists if the worker has a contract or some sort of, he was hired with witnesses to indicate that he was hired in the first place. But if he was hired and there's no proof to the fact that he was hired, since he was able to say to him, I never hired you, he would be believed to say, I did hire you and I already paid. Amar Rami Bar Chama, Rabbi Bar Chama says, Kama me'alya Hashmaisa. How wondrous. This is a great thing that you said. It's a good point. Amarle Rava, my mal yuso. What do you mean? What's so great about that? Im Kain, Shevuos Shomrim, Dechayav Rachmana, Heichim Ishkachasla. If what you're saying is true, then the person, the whole oath of securities, which is in the Torah, then you never have a circumstance where a person should be liable for the oath. Why? The guy says, hey, remember I gave you my Kiddush cup to watch? And the guy says, what Kiddush cup? I know what you're talking about. So since I can claim that I don't know what you're talking about, of course I'm believed to say, yes, I lost it and I'm not liable, right? And he shouldn't have to take an oath because he should be believed based on the fact that he could have made a claim that it never happened. So the answer, Yachalomar lo nensu, because he would be able to say that it happened completely by accident. Dafkile be'edim. So the answer is no. You're right. It's just like the same circumstance. The oath of security only takes place in a circumstance where the original transference of security happened with witnesses. Mitoch sheyachalomar lo hechzar tivlach, because the person, right? Because. So even in that case, why should he should be able to be believed to say that I don't want to take an oath on it? Why? Because he could say, you're right, but I gave it back to you. Okay? So yachal lomer lo nenso, therefore I should be believed to say that when it broke, it wasn't my fault at all, so therefore I'm not liable to pay. And he shouldn't have to take the oath because he has this better claim. So the answer is, da'afgid le bishtara. The answer is, he has a contract indicating what the security was. And so now, Miklal, that implies that Tarvayu Svirulu, that both of these two that are arguing back and forth on this point, Rami Bar Chama and Rava, both agree that Hamafkid Eitzo Chaveru Be'edim, that if somebody gives an item to another person with witnesses, Ein Tzarech Lahachzir Lo Be'edim, you don't have to return it with witnesses. Because otherwise, if he did have to return it with witnesses, then he wouldn't be believed to say, I paid you back. Because he would ask him, where are the witnesses then? So the answer is, there are no witnesses to the fact that he gave it back, therefore it would be a valid claim. And the other thing to note is, Bishtar tzarech lahachzir lo be'edim, that if he lent it to him with a contract, then he does have to repay that with witnesses, right? So then, Kari Rami Bar Chama Alei Rav Sheshas. So Rabbi Chama said about Rav Sheshas, Vayasim David es hadvar ma'ela belibo, that David HaMelech placed these things into his heart. He really learned these things into his heart, and he said that that's true about Rav Sheshas. Why? Because Rav Sheshas heard this teaching, Da'ashkeche Rav Sheshas the Rabbi Bar Shmuel, when Rav Sheshas, he was thinking about this, and he saw Rabbi Bar Shmuel, Amar Le, he said to him, Tani mar midi besachir, tell me a Dvar Torah that has to do with tell me a halacha that has to do with hiring workers. So Amar Le, he said to him, in Tanina, he says, I learned we learned in a Mishnah. Say it's a Mishnah, right? Make sure it's a Mishnah. Brisa. It's a Brisa. Sachir bismano nishba v'notel. He says that a worker who demands his wages at the right time, so he swears and he can take it. Ketzad, how is that? Bisman shamar lo sechartani, when the person says, when the owner of the establishment, the employer says, I hired you. V'lo nasati li schari, right? You hired me, but you didn't pay me. V'halo omer secharticha v'nasati lach. And the other person says, I admit, I hired you, but I didn't pay you. Aval, however, Amar lo, if he says to him, because then there's no dispute over the hiring. Now, it's just a dispute over whether I got paid or not. And in that circumstance, you believe the worker. But if he says, Amar lo shtaim katsatztali, that the amount of the payment was 2, v'halla Amar lo katsatzti ella achas, and the other one says, no, it was only 1, hamotzi mechaveiro lav haraya, so then it would be that which, then there would need to be a proof of that point. So, because we said that the owner, the employer, certainly knows what the wage was. Now, Hami the Seifa Baraya, that means that the worker has to prove, the worker in that circumstance has to prove that that was the amount that was set. That means Havi Reisha below Raya. That means that the worker is entitled to collect his wage without a proof. He doesn't have to bring witnesses. He can bring without a proof. So Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak says, so that seems to imply that there's not even an oath that's necessary, no oath. So Mem Vav and Aleph, Reisha v'Seifa beraya. The answer is that really in the first there is a proof that's necessary in both cases. Raya de l'shalim katani raya, but when it says that the worker needs to bring a proof, that means that he needs to bring a proof of witnesses in order to be able to collect. Shvua lo katani, but a proof relating to the need for an oath, it does not say. Okay, so we're going to stop here for...
Boy, perfect.
Stop here for...
Wow. We still need 3 more people for me.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.